Thank you. And I'm very pleased to be here. And I want to congratulate ITK on this event, President Mary Simon, and I'm just thrilled to see so many leaders from the past, including the founding president, Honorable Tagak Curley, my friend. And I'm not going to try and acknowledge everybody who's here. I'm pleased to say some opening words on this session about the vision and voices of Inuit youth. But I'm an older guy. Us senators are called Ituit by Inuit, and that makes me an Ituk who feels very privileged to represent Nunavut in the Senate. So being an older guy, I would like to just take a few minutes to look back before we hear from tomorrow's leaders about where we're going, because I do believe that in order to see where you're going, you need to know where you've been. So I want to take a moment to look back and maybe just tell you personally where ITC has come from. And I want to tell you personally that I'm here today because of ITC, Inuit Tapiritsat of Canada. Why? Because ITC, and the president of the day was James Arvaluk, ITC identified a big need with respect to the justice system, a big need for Inuit. A paper which was prepared which said, it pointed out Inuit have a, quote, benign approach to confrontation. This is totally at odds, the paper said, with the adversarial, confrontational, plaintiff versus defense, Crown versus defense, plaintiff versus defendant approach of the Western justice system. And the paper also pointed out that the circuit court system in the North was truly colonial. Judges, prosecutors, defense lawyers arrived in communities on a plane. They held court. They bought a few carvings, and they left, usually with a few prisoners in handcuffs in the back of the plane. ITC proposed a new approach. Maliganik Tukasinyakwik was designed to demonstrate a completely different approach based on regional legal services centers governed by a board of Inuit with trained Inuit paraprofessionals working with resident lawyers who could learn about the community and learn how to pronounce their clients' names. And it also envisioned a mandate for law reform and legal education. And I was hired to be the first executive director of what was to be a pilot project. Let's see how it works. For a year, under funding from Canada and the government of the Northwest Territories. Well, the model was demonstrated to be successful and became the basis for the delivery of legal services throughout Nunavut, what is now Nunavut, and the Northwest Territories. Also became the inspiration for legal services for Labrador Legal Services. This progress is the direct result of ITC's initiative. This is what this organization has done and can do. Make a big difference in people's lives, show a new approach. And I just wanted to mention quickly another thing I remember being involved in the early days of working with ITC, and I used to attend their annual general meetings and make reports about Malianik Tukasniavik, was a focus on telecommunications in the 70s. And at that time, Bell Canada offered services to Northern Canada. Long-distance rates were charged based on cost. Very expensive. ITC engaged experts to advocate at the CRTC, the Canadian Radio Television Commission, resulting in a ruling where the CRTC ruled that the large population base in Ontario and Quebec could and should subsidize the smaller number of consumers in the north, and long-distance rates dropped. ITC, now ITK, found a need and found ways to fill that need very effectively through advocacy. What needs? I also want to mention that ITC was pivotal in pushing for Aboriginal rights in the Constitution of Canada, and ITC was pivotal in pushing for Aboriginal rights through land claims. And many of the younger people here today may not remember that there wasn't always settled land claims. Somebody had to start demanding recognition of the rights of the first peoples in Canada, the Inuit, who were in the great position of not having treaties. That was the role played by ITC. So, in the process that led to the recognition of Aboriginal rights for Inuit, and don't forget, the Constitution of Canada recognizes Aboriginal rights for Indians, Métis, and the Inuit. Section 35. ITC was front and center. And ITC, and I think Rosemary Kuptana was the president for much of that time, was front and center in the process which tried to define Aboriginal rights after its inclusion in the Constitution of Canada. Now, since those early days that I remember so well, so fondly, when ITC had an office on Somerset Street, of course, a lot has changed for the Inuit of Canada due to your efforts, many people in this room. So now we have land claims settled for Inuit in all regions of Canada, from the Inuvialuit to Nunavut, Nunavik, and Nunatsiavut. And let's give ourselves some credit. Those comprehensive land claims were settled as a priority ahead of a host of other land claims demands from First Nations throughout Canada. We led the way, beginning with the Inuvialuit and the Committee of Original Peoples in the early 80s. So this is a huge accomplishment that we should celebrate, including the pivotal role that ITC had in fostering the awareness in Canada and encouraging leaders, board members, presidents, to play a role in settling the land claims in all regions of the Inuit homeland. So where should ITK go next? And I think that's what we're going to look at in this panel. And I'm anxious to hear from the leaders of tomorrow on that. But just a few quick thoughts before I let you go. Now we have settled land claims. So ITK, of course, must not duplicate the role of the land claims organizations in dealing with lands and resource management issues. Similarly, We also must recognize another major accomplishment. We have now governments in the Inuit homelands in Nunavut and Nunatsiavut, which again is a result of the pioneering push for the rights of Inuit from the National Inuit Organization, ITK. There's still more work to be done on self-government. I fully acknowledge the Inuvialuit and the Inuit of Nunavik are still working on self-government initiatives. But we have governments that are representative of Inuit in Nunavik and Nunatsiavut. So what should ITK be doing as we look forward? I would say ITK should be careful not to duplicate the mandates of the settled land claims organizations, and I don't think it is attempting to do so. ITK should also not tread in areas where federal, provincial, or territorial governments have responsibilities, unless in partnership with those governments. And I'm well aware of President Mary Simon's important initiative on education. Probably nothing is more important for Inuit than education. I'm delighted to see students here today and more Inuit going on to post-secondary education. But this is a challenge because this is a field occupied by provinces and territories. So change must be pursued in partnership with them. And I know this is part of President Simon's strategy. Housing is another very important need in the Inuit homeland. Again, this is an area occupied by governments. Maybe there's a role for ITK in dealing with these needs, which I think are common across the Inuit homeland. So what I see as a challenge looking ahead for ITK is carving out a niche for Inuit programs also amidst the predominant First Nations programs and populations in Canada. We were able to carve out a role for Inuit in the comprehensive land claims, which even put us ahead of the First Nations. But it's a constant challenge, as President Simon knows. Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development is redesigning its Aboriginal economic development programs. Where do the Inuit fit in? Do they fit in amidst those changes? And I know, again, here in this area, ITK is playing a major role in advocacy on the important field of Aboriginal economic development, making sure the Inuit needs are respected. Our late friend and dynamic former president of ITK, Josie Kusagak, successfully pushed for the creation of an Inuit Secretariat within the Department of Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development. What does it do? How is it working? These are some of the questions that you will face, you will have an opportunity to grapple with in future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to have this chance to tell you a bit about my story, my early connection with ITC, my gratitude to ITC for giving me the chance to develop a public service career in the North, which has taken me to the privileged position of representing Nunavut in the Senate of Canada. I congratulate you again on this session. I've asked a few questions. Now I'd like to turn the voice over to tomorrow's leaders, and I'll turn the mic over to Pujut, and I think you're going to introduce the panelists, please. Thank you very much.